My question relates to this diplomatic crisis between Israel and Ukraine regarding a Russian vessel that was suspected of carrying stolen grain from Ukraine. We know that early this morning Israel rejected this vessel after several days of accusations between the two sides. I want to know, do you have any reaction to the end of this diplomatic crisis, and do you maintain the threat of sanctions against Israel and other countries that might be tempted to buy stolen grain from Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Little before Anwar.
Yes, thank you for the question. We have already delivered our position, but I'm happy to reiterate it from the stage, and it is unchanged. As shown actually last week with the adoption of the 90 billion support loan for Ukraine and the 20th package of sanctions, the EU remains steadfast in supporting Ukraine and pressuring Russia until it ends its war of aggression. In this context, we, as EU, we have taken note of the reports that a Russian shadow fleet vessel carrying stolen Ukrainian grain has been allowed to unload at Haifa port in Israel, and that despite previous contacts of Ukraine with Israeli authorities on the subject. We condemn all actions that help fund Russia's illegal war effort and circumvent EU sanctions. And indeed, we remain ready to target such actions by listing individuals and entities in third countries if necessary. We have also approached the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the issue at the level of our EU ambassadors, and I will refrain from commenting any further at this stage because, obviously, of the confidentiality of diplomatic exchanges.
Thank you. Anwar. Other questions on foreign affairs to Anwar? Yes, please.
Thank you, Paula. Anwar, je voudrais poser une question sur... Pardon, non, c'est quelqu'un... Ok. Je voudrais poser une question sur la situation dans les territoires occupés, où les colons, évidemment, ils font d'arracher les oliviers jusqu'à détruire tous les projets quand ils peuvent le faire, même financés par des partenaires, entre autres l'Union européenne. Je voudrais avoir ton commentaire là-dessus, s'il y a moyen de voir ce que vous allez prendre des actions, ou bien tout simplement si votre position restera déclaratoire comme vous le faites souvent. Je te remercie.
Merci Noureddine. Nous condamnons fermement les actes de violence commis par des colons en Cisjordanie occupée, et notamment la récente démolition d'une école financée par l'Union européenne et l'attaque contre une station d'épuration à Tayassir qui a également et malheureusement entraîné la mort d'un civil palestinien. Cette installation, qui est financée par des contributions de l'Union européenne mais également par l'Agence française de développement, constitue un élément vital des infrastructures essentielles pour la population palestinienne. Nous attendons des autorités israéliennes qu'elles prennent rapidement des mesures à l'encontre des auteurs de ces actes afin de les traduire en justice, et nous appelons également les autorités israéliennes à veiller à ce que les dommages soient réparés. Nous avons de notre part soulevé cette question auprès des autorités israéliennes et appelons Israël à prendre des mesures décisives pour mettre un terme à l'expansion continue des colonies et aux activités connexes, notamment les déclarations de terre appartenant à l'État, ainsi que les expulsions, les démolitions, les confiscations, ainsi que les transferts forcés de Palestiniens qui ont atteint des niveaux records au cours de l'année écoulée. Et nous rappelons sans relâche, et ceci de manière répétée à Israël, la nécessité de respecter ses obligations en vertu du droit international envers la population palestinienne de Cisjordanie occupée, y compris dans la zone C, à Jérusalem-Est, et de s'acquitter de son devoir de protéger les civils ainsi que les infrastructures civiles, et ce conformément au droit international.
Merci. Oui, et maintenant, attends, Noureddine, tu as une question de suivi?
Deuxième question sur la Palestine. La flottille qui devait essayer de lever l'embargo et le siège israélien contre Gaza a été victime d'actes de violence du côté de la Grèce. Avez-vous une idée qui est derrière ces actes et si vous avez un commentaire là-dessus? Parce que à chaque fois qu'il y a des organisations non gouvernementales de la part du monde entier ou des pays européens qui essaient d'atteindre de manière et emmener des aides humanitaires, se font agresser, que ce soit à Tunis, que ce soit à Malte, que ce soit en Italie, que ce soit en Grèce. Je te remercie.
Merci Nourdine. Je vais juste peut-être te demander de répéter la fin de ta question parce que tu as élargi le périmètre au-delà de Gaza et à de nombreux pays, mais j'aimerais juste comprendre le...
As-tu des informations qui est derrière ces actes d'agression contre la flottille qui devrait partir de la Grèce vers Gaza et s'il y a un commentaire politique à ce propos? Merci.
Merci Noureddine. Ce que les activistes souhaitent réaliser, c'est sensibiliser le public à la situation humanitaire qui est catastrophique à Gaza, afin de fournir à la population une aide qui est indispensable. Nous partageons cet objectif, à savoir l'acheminement immédiat et essentiel de l'aide humanitaire à ceux qui ont un besoin urgent et à la fin des souffrances humanitaires à Gaza, ainsi que le respect du droit international humanitaire. Cela étant dit, nous décourageons, et ma collègue a déjà pu le dire dans le passé, ces flottilles en tant que forme d'acheminement de l'aide humanitaire. Pourquoi? Parce qu'ils risquent la sécurité de leurs participants. Cela étant dit, nous réitérons notre appel, et en particulier vis-à-vis d'Israël, pour qu'il respecte le droit international, y compris le droit international humanitaire et le droit maritime international. Maintenant, s'agissant de la situation à Gaza, puisque le point que tu soulèves est celui de la situation humanitaire, nous, Union européenne, n'avons eu cesse d'être vocaux, mais également de traduire nos déclarations en actes. Depuis octobre 2023, nous avons fourni plus de 675 millions d'euros d'aide humanitaire aux Palestiniens, organisé 84 vols humanitaires et expédié plus de 5500 tonnes d'aide, y compris des médicaments, des abris, des fournitures d'eau, d'assainissement et d'hygiène. Nous avons également coordonné l'évacuation médicale de 451 patients palestiniens. Ceci n'est bien évidemment pas suffisant eu égard à l'ampleur et à la magnitude des besoins sur le terrain. Dans ce cadre-là, nous avons salué l'ouverture récente de points de passage, notamment celui de Kerem Shalom et de Zikim, et nous demandons à ce que d'autres points de passage soient ouverts afin de pouvoir acheminer l'aide humanitaire. Je rappellerai notre action également quand il s'agit d'Yubam Rafah, parce que nous activons également tous les outils que nous avons dans notre boîte à outils afin de pouvoir apporter une aide à ceux qui en ont besoin. Comme vous le savez, nous sommes déployés sur le terrain, et ce à la requête des parties, israélienne, palestinienne et également égyptienne. Et depuis le début des opérations, puisque comme vous le savez, parmi ceux qui quittent la bande de Gaza et ceux vers l'Égypte via le point de passage à Rafah, sont des personnes qui sont en besoin d'aide médicale. Et depuis le début des opérations, 2902 personnes ont franchi le point de passage, dont 1425 entrées et 1477 sorties, dont 502 cas médicaux. Donc pour traduire en des termes concrets, et également à l'appui de chiffres, que nos déclarations également se traduisent en actes sur le terrain.
Merci Anouar. Oui, Naura maintenant.
Angela Mauro of Posis on the flotilla as well, and on the move by Israel to block and arrest the activists last night, early this morning, in international waters. What's your position on this move exactly? Is it a breach of international law according to you, or is it justified because Israel says that the activists wanted to stop one Israeli ship? So what's your assessment? Thanks.
Thank you. I think I already touched on the issue, but happy to reiterate it. Freedom of navigation under international law must be upheld. That's one. Then we have been calling, and we reiterate this call, on Israel to respect international law, including international humanitarian law and international maritime law, which is quite clear. Then, in terms of the situation of the personnel that you have been referring to, I will recall that in terms of the consular protection, the responsibility for consular protection of the participants lies with the national authorities of the countries of their respective nationalities.
Thank you. Anwar, other questions to Anwar? Yes, please.
A lot, Elena Abramovich, Radio Free Europe. I have two questions. First is regarding the announcement of U.S. President Donald Trump regarding possible reduction of troops in Germany. Will it anyhow influence security situation in Europe? And another one is regarding U.S. building new coalition to ensure ships can pass through Hormuz. It is reported that the mission would share information, coordinate diplomacy actions and sanctions. Was the EU approached with an offer to join or considering to join this initiative? Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the questions will be for Anita, and one on the second.
Yes, I'll take the second angle. On Hormuz, we are in regular touch with all our partners in the region and beyond to obviously contribute in a positive manner to the situation that we have on the ground. Obviously, we all want the strait to remain free of charge, and we, as Europe, will play our part in terms of restoring the free flow of energy and trade once the conditions allow. And again, recalling that we are supporting diplomatic solutions and that we also have our operation, SPDES, in the region, which is again the quickest way to protect shipping in the region. And again, the High Rep was quite clear following the Foreign Affairs Council in terms of having asked ministers to make more assets available.
On your first question regarding US troops in Europe, Anita, we have a nice tandem here in terms of foreign affairs on the podium. Go ahead.
So on the question, we will reiterate our position, which is long-standing in terms of U.S. being a vital partner in contributing to Europe's security and defense, and the fact that the deployment of U.S. troops in Europe is also in the U.S. interest in support of its global role. At the same time, we have recognized, and this is what we have been doing, namely investing in our own security and defense. And EU member states that are NATO allies are also increasing their defense spending in an unprecedented pace. And since this was referring to the particular case of Germany, just compared to 2023, the figures are public. The Defense Ministry has allocated more than 100 billion euros for external security in 2026, and in 2029 this amount is foreseen to increase to around 152 billion. So this is a threefold increase in this regard. And other remarks on the specific comments made, we will not have.
Thank you, Anita. Other foreign affairs questions? Yes, Vitaly, go ahead.
It's on negotiation between Russia and the United States. Yesterday it was called between President Trump and Putin, and after this call, the Russian side published a readout where they claimed that both parties have a similar view on the behavior of Ukrainian government, and they blame, Moscow blame Europe in supporting this war. Do you have some contact with American side, and is it true that they have now already, Moscow and Washington have a similar view on situation in Ukraine, and it's not the view of European Union? Thank you.
Thank you, Vitaly. On our side, we have always welcomed the U.S. efforts towards a just and lasting peace. This is our aim as well. When it comes to Moscow, I will not comment on Russia's intentions, because these are very clear, about from killing, torturing, and sending drones to target innocent civilians. We have seen nothing more. Hence, there is zero trust in anything that Russia says or does.
Thank you, Anita. Other questions on foreign affairs, please?
Hi, Anita. Angela Skujins from Euronews. A question about Russia's victory parade, scheduled to take place next month, obviously in the news at the moment. Much less fanfare this year, but last year we saw the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico and the Serbian President Alexander Vučić make an appearance. The EU High Representative Kaja Kallas she was pretty strident in her criticism of this, and she almost inferred that consequences would occur if any leader went. Can you tell me what were the consequences for those leaders that attended, and what is her position this year on the military parade, and if any EU leader goes, or a leader from an EU aspirant country? Thank you.
Thank you very much. When it comes to the 9th of May, as you know, we are celebrating Europe and all that it represents, namely peace, unity, prosperity and security, everything that Russia is not standing for. So when it comes to what the 9th of May represents for Russia, this is about exploiting the end of the World War II celebrations for propaganda and the justification of a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And the High Representative was very clear, both when it comes to the EU member states, but also the candidate countries. If you want to show support, Kyiv is the place to be, and for sure not Moscow.
Thank you, Anita. Yes, in the back.
Thank you. I have a follow-up on the global Summit flotilla. You may also recall that a couple of days ago when I brought this issue up before the flotilla was attacked by Israel, one of your colleagues, one of the spokespersons, refrained from making a call to Israel and instead, like you repeated today, made a call to the participants of the flotilla saying that we discourage these flotillas because they are unsafe, basically. I don't know if you've seen it, but the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs conveniently clipped and shared this response and praised it. So I would like to basically know, when you say you discourage these flotillas, do you fear that you may be giving a free hand to Israel, because making it look like it's not supported by the global community may make it easier for Israel to intervene to these flotillas?
Let's be very clear. We want to make sure that the participants in the flotilla are not putting their I'm missing the word, are not in risk. That's what was meant, and Anwar also recalled our line on the flotilla. If necessary, you can reiterate, but that is the angle. We want to deliver the necessary aid, and we are committed to delivering the aid, and there are safer ways to do it than in the form of a flotilla. But Anwar.
Yes, indeed. No comment on any comments or amplification from our positions, but I will here stress again and obviously fully stand with the comments from my colleague Eva from this Monday, because this is our official position, that we discourage flotillas as a form of aid delivery. Not comma, not full, stop, sorry, but comma, because they actually risk the safety of their participants. So this is our position, and I recalled also that in terms of having effective humanitarian aid being provided on the ground, that we are again calling on all the parties to actually ensure that we have unimpeded access in terms of humanitarian aid into Gaza, recalling also the aid that the EU has been providing using the wide scope of our tools. So nothing to see there, if you allow us.
Thank you. There.
Thank you very much, Leila Mossadit from Brussels Morning. I would like to ask a question regarding the Pakistan and Afghanistan, because the United Nations published a report and said that the attacks that taking the place in Afghanistan, especially in university and civil society, they are condemned that. I would like to ask, what is the official position on the European Union on Pakistani military attacks on Afghanistan, and would you like to have some negotiation or make some sanction or do some pressure, diplomatic pressure on Pakistanis to stop these attacks, especially for the civil society in Afghanistan? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that we have been vocal at the time of the exchange of fires that we have seen, and I think it was a month ago. But again, our position is consistent and remains unchanged. We call for immediate de-escalation and maximum restraint following the renewed violence that we had seen at the time, and in case of any pickup again of violence between Afghanistan and Pakistan. We, as EU, reiterate again that the Afghan territory must not be used or attacked, basically in terms of threatening or attacking any country, and we call on all actors to take effective action against terrorist groups operating from their territory. And we urge both sides to engage in dialogue to address their security concerns and reduce tensions, recalling again that international humanitarian law must be respected and protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure ensured at all times.
Thank you, Anwar. Other questions on foreign affairs? I don't see any. We move on and change the subject. Yes, please.
Olga Kladkova, German television. I have a rule of law question for Marcus. Sunday marks the World Press Freedom Day, and this year's reports all point to the same problem. Journalists are increasingly targeted by spyware. So the EU committed to protect journalists for exactly that kind of surveillance with the Media Freedom Act. So my question is, why hasn't the European Commission moved to regulate spyware vendors and, like, for example, Paragon and EU countries that are buying them?
Thanks very much for the question, Olga. The Commission's position on this is very clear. Any attempts to illegally access data of citizens, including journalists and political opponents, is unacceptable. The Commission has been working very hard to address the illegal use of spyware from various angles of EU law. First, we have clear and very robust safeguards in EU law already, namely the GDPR. Personal data must be processed lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner. And the e-Privacy Directive prohibits the interception of communications and access of information without user consent. Two, now we also have the European Media Freedom Act, fully applicable since summer last year. It includes specific safeguards banning the use of spyware on journalists and their families. And three, cyber surveillance items are subject to strict import and export conditions in the EU. And the rules on this will be further strengthened with the Cyber Resilience Act, which will start to be applicable from December 2027. Something else that's important to mention is that our rule of law report is a report where we constantly monitor and address these issues for a number of member states from the perspective of checks and balances and the protection of journalists. So, to sum up, the issue of spyware has the Commission's full attention. We have strong legislation in place. We will continue to explore options to further act, and we are further strengthening our legislative framework.
Thank you, Marcus. Olga, you have a follow-up.
But, I mean, we have cases, for example, in Italy where we still don't know who has spied on a journalist. In your position as a rule of law safeguard actor, when is the red line crossed and the EU Commission would act actually, with all the safeguards you were just telling us?
Thanks very much. I mean, first very important point to make is that, of course, investigations are for the national authorities. So this is something law enforcement authorities in the member states have to address. And as I've said, any attempt to illegally access data of citizens and journalists in particular is unacceptable and illegal. And now, as regards the overall assessments, this is outlined in our rule of law report for each and every member state, so I also invite you to look there.
Thank you. To Marcus, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Chris Powers, Kyiv Independent. Same topic, actually, the Reporters Without Borders report. Two questions. So one, the report says that across the EU, for a range of reasons, the European Media Freedom Act is being inconsistently applied. So I was wondering if there's a general reaction to this from the Commission, if there's an intent to do anything to ensure that it is consistently applied. And then on a more positive note, the report also notes that Ukraine and Moldova have significantly improved, overtaking the US and several EU countries. I was wondering how you see this development in light of their EU candidate status. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start with your second questions, which I am replying to with my Guillaume hat.
Yes. Enlargement related is today taken up by Marcus, so that comes timely now.
The European Commission has indeed seen the latest World Press Freedom Index. We recall that our assessment is clearly outlined in our annual enlargement reports and our country-specific chapters. The last of our reports shows that both Ukraine and Moldova made progress in the area of media freedom, and these developments demonstrate both countries' commitment to democratic values and underline their gradual alignment with European Union standards, which place a free and independent media at the core of the Copenhagen criteria.
Thank you. Other questions to Marcus with his Guillaume hat also too. Go ahead.
Karina Müller, TVR Moldova. I have a question actually to Guillaume, but I think Marcus will respond. Yesterday, Hungary's incoming Prime Minister announced on X that he will return on May 25 in Brussels for further talks. There are growing expectations that the Council could officially open cluster negotiations with Moldova and Ukraine around May 26. Can you confirm whether enlargement was discussed in yesterday's exchange between President von der Leyen and the incoming Hungarian Prime Minister?
You've seen that the President indeed posted about her meeting with the Prime Minister-elect Peter Magyar, and the main gist of her social media post goes in the sense that they discussed the steps which are necessary to unlock the EU funds which are earmarked to Hungary and that have been frozen until now due to corruption issues and rule of law concerns. So we have not gone into further topics. Now, you know that in terms of enlargement and the opening of the clusters, the ball is now on the Council side. That's where we need to see the necessary support by all Member States in order to trigger the opening of the clusters. From our side, from the Commission side, we have been very clear on what our position is with regard to the opening of the clusters and to the progress that these two candidate countries have been doing. So that's all we can say for the moment, and we will see indeed whether in terms of enlargement process there will be progress in upcoming meetings at the Council. You have a follow-up?
So the enlargement wasn't on the table yesterday?
This, I cannot confirm nor deny. What I tell you is that it's not now in the front of the Commission to take any steps in that regard, because we have made our proposals with regard to the candidate countries at stake, and now we need to see what happens in the Council. Yes, Vitaly.
Thank you. Just to follow up, did you have in this agenda the issue of Ukraine broadly than enlargement, maybe the issue of Hungarian veto on any questions, any decision to support Ukraine? Have you discussed this topic with future leader of Hungary? How removed the constant veto of Hungary on this decision in support of Ukraine?
We've seen last week the removal of a blockade, so to say, to the Ukrainian loan, and that was a very welcome and expected step, because it reflected a commitment from the government which is still in place in Hungary. So that was a major development, and we will be taking it from there. And all the rest, as said, I cannot speculate about possible further discussions that have been the subject of the meeting yesterday. Other questions? Jennifer.
I think it's a new topic, but it's
on Marcus' portfolios, also stepping in for Guillaume today. David.
Thank you, Paula. David Price, Your Democracy and Chum.info. My question is on electoral law. So the Commission's got a huge banner on the outside of the building vertically down over all the stories which says democracy. And I congratulate you on that, and I'm wondering when we're going to have it in the European Union. All the treaties from the beginning, from 1951, Paris Treaty, says there should be universal suffrage in the European Parliament, the European Assembly as it was, and I'm wondering when this is going to happen. There was a plan in 1960 that there should be one person, one vote for the European Parliament, and that didn't happen. And I'm wondering, it's also in the present treaties that there should be universal suffrage, one person, one vote. And I'm wondering whether any discussions were made with the Parliament in the recent agreement about putting one person, one vote in for the elections, the coming elections. Every time I raise this question, it's either too early or too late. So I'm asking the question now because we've got adequate amount of time to have one person, one vote for the elections. And there's also, efforts from the 1960 plan about how it could be done. So can you update us on what is happening about one person, one vote in the European Union?
Thanks, David, for the question. The voting rules for both Parliament and also the Commission is regulated in the treaty, and we have nothing to add at this stage.
Thank you. I have one question online, also to Marcos. Tommaso Lecca.
Yes, hi, thank you for the floor. Tommaso Lecca with Politico Europe. I have a question about the entry-exit system, because I see that Ryanair has written to European governments urging to suspend the entry-exit.
Tommaso, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm sorry. It's not very, very clear. So if you can speak a bit more loudly so that we hear you well.
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was saying that Ryanair today has written to European governments asking them to suspend the entry-exit system until September, saying that Greece has already done it. And this request comes after several other aviation lobbies, even non-European ones, ask for similar suspensions of the new border management system. So first, can you confirm that the Greek government suspended the entry-exit system until September? Is this in line with the EU rules? And second, what is your reaction to the many requests to suspend the system for the summer season? Thank you.
Thanks, Tommaso, for the question. Maybe a couple of words in general on the entry-exit system and how it's working. The entry-exit system is fully operational across all Schengen countries. Europe has now the most modern IT border system in the world. The core purpose of this new system is to make our borders more secure and to protect EU citizens. And we see already very good results since its introduction, namely in October 2025. You remember this is a gradual rollout. More than 61 million entries and exits were registered, as well as almost 30,000 refusals of entry. And we have already 770 persons who were identified as posing a security threat to the Union and not let in. So now what we can see from the first weeks of what happened since the system is working full, in the overwhelming majority of member states, there are no issues. The system is overall working very well. We see very quick processing times in a number of member states. The average is around 70 seconds, and we have some member states where it is 30 seconds. There are a few member states where technical issues have been detected, and this can be expected in the first days of the introduction of such a major new system. This is normal. So now we will continue to provide the necessary support as the Commission, but this is of course for member states on the ground to see and implement and correct any problems that might occur. We're in close contact with all the member states, and ready also to update on any new developments. And again, this is a major new system. We have millions of new travelers, non-EU citizens, coming from all over the world to Europe every week. We see that it's working very well in almost all cases, but you cannot avoid with such an amount of travelers that there are sometimes incidents. And those incidents are not always, and in most of the cases actually, related to the introduction of the entry-exit system. There are many reasons why there can be queues in airports. Sometimes it can be the entry-exit system, and it has been, but not always. And as I've said, overall this is working very well.
Thank you. Marcus, for putting it into the broader context indeed. David.
Thank you. It's a follow-up, and David Carretta, Radio Radicale. Thank you for the opportunity. Two questions, Marcus. The first one, if the situation is the one that you have just described, why so many actors, airlines, company, airports, and so on, are asking the suspension until September? The second question, it's a follow-up. How many countries, I don't know if you can name it, have taken the opportunity to suspend the system, and for which, or how many airports? Thank you.
Thanks very much, David, for the question. That allows me to clarify the matter of suspensions, or maybe we should rather say flexibilities, because there is inbuilt flexibility in the entry-exit system. That means until the end of summer, at least, there are possibilities in peak situations when authorities see that there are queues to suspend certain functionalities of the system, namely the ones that cost the most of the time, which is the registration of the biometrics. So this is something that is inbuilt in the system. This is something that is allowed in the system, and this is something that member state authorities are using already very much so. So we have these flexibilities inbuilt. They can be used. They are, however, difficult to track because this is something that can be done on an ad hoc basis, on an everyday basis. It's normal, and we encourage member states to make use of the possibilities they have to make the system function properly. So what was the first question?
Number of suspensions, I think, or airport or asking.
I cannot if the situation is so smooth as the one you have described in your answer to Tommaso, why the vast majority of the actors, airline companies, airports, some governments, are asking to suspend the system until the end of the summer season?
Thank you, David. No, what I can tell you is that we are talking to member states on a daily basis. We are also in touch with other stakeholders, and what I can say is basically what I've just said. Overall, the system is very well. I'm not saying that there haven't been any issues. There have also been issues in a number of member states. In some member states, these issues are being addressed. But we see that overall, given the fact that this is millions of travelers on a daily basis, the introduction has been going rather smoothly so far.
And as Marcus said very clearly, it is normal that with the rolling out of such a big, important system that there may be some issues to tackle, and those are the ones you hear. But you're not hearing when things do go smoothly and when, indeed, hundreds of thousands of passengers every day are going through the system without any further problems. Good. And with this, we move to a different topic. I have many questions online. I have many questions in the room. And I will now give the floor online to Sofia Sanchez. Are you there, Sofia? Otherwise, there are plenty of candidates. Sofia is not there. So I'll take Gabriel, please. Okay, go ahead.
No. Yep. Thank you very much, Paolo. It's a question on the budget, which I believe is Thomas today. In Cyprus, the European Commission President called for new own resources, said we need to have the massive 1.9 trillion MFF to pay for more Europe. And it's a surprisingly popular position. It's shared by the European Council President. It's shared by the Parliament. The only question I have is whether anyone forgot to tell the people paying for it, because since then you've seen a bit of a rebellion from countries like Germany, the Nordics, that say the budget is too big. The call for own resources challenges national competences, and the Commission's going to have to back down. Are you prepared to back down after having, spent all the money on the big press conference announcing the massive figure? And was there a bit of a communications mess up when it came to getting capitals on board with the plans?
When it comes to, sorry, can you repeat that?
Getting capitals on board with the plans.
Okay, good. And indeed, as you said very well, we are a versatile team over here, and we colleagues step in for each other, and we have Thomas stepping in on budgetary questions today. Now, let me just say as an introduction that the Commission put forward its multi-financial framework proposal last year to cover indeed the next financial period, and it was very clear on one very obvious reality, which is we are asking and expecting Europe to be more active on a broader set of areas, and we are all seeing it from defence, you name it, with the same amount of resources. It cannot work, right? And that's why in the MFF proposal that the Commission put forward, there was a very clear solution to this difficulty, to this challenge, which is we do need more own resources if we do not want member states to increase their national contributions. And that addresses your question. Indeed, member states are not keen on increasing their national contributions. So if there is no increase of national contributions, there are not a million options. Then we need to have new own resources, and that was part of the proposal by the Commission. And you know that this was precisely one of the focus of the discussions in the informal Council last week in Cyprus, where the issue of own resources was discussed. And it was the first of certainly many to come, but it's very clear that there is not a million possible solutions in how to go about more tasks, more responsibilities, and if we don't have more national contributions, then the only possibility ahead is new own resources. Anything to add?
Not a lot to add, Paula. Just on the reference, was it a comms mistake? Definitely not. It is a very ambitious proposal, indeed, to match Europe's ambition and the challenges we're currently facing. It is a proposal on capitals being on board or not. As you know very well, Gabriel, it's now up for the Council and the Parliament to agree, and they definitely have the possibility now to discuss and to get us through the process.
Good. Other questions to Thomas in his very broad portfolio today? Nope. Okay, we can change topic now, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer Rankin at The Guardian. Switching to budget control, and in the context of the European Parliament discharge procedure yesterday, they voted on a resolution which contained some very serious, strong criticisms of Commissioner Várhelyi, to quote, serious and prolonged management failures at DG NEAR, as well as questioning whether he'd shown accountability, reliability and sound administration. So your colleagues have kindly given me a bilateral reply on the technicalities, including on when a commissioner may resign, given the rapporteur's call for his resignation. But my question to you today is simply, does President von der Leyen have confidence in Commissioner Várhelyi, and does she wish him to stay in his position?
Well, Jennifer, I can say that the President has confidence in all the members of the College, so there's no news there. Other questions? Yes, please.
Bonjour, Camille Candefu de l'agence France Presse. Demain, c'est l'application provisoire de l'accord entre l'UE et le Mercosur. Peut-être, disons, pour ma grand-mère qui suit peut-être pas les négociations de ce traité de manière aussi assidue que certains d'entre nous ici, qu'est-ce qui va se passer demain exactement? Comment ça va affecter les gens? Vous imaginez qu'en France, il y a une certaine inquiétude à cet effet. Voilà, merci.
Merci de la question. Effectivement, ça nous permet de rappeler ce qui se passe demain, quels sont les bénéfices de cet accord. Voilà, Olof.
Merci pour la question, Camille. Avant de répondre, je veux juste vous rappeler qu'on vient de publier un Daily News où il y a pas mal d'informations, une belle citation de la part de la présidente et du commissaire Šefčovič. Demain, le traité de commerce entre l'Union européenne et le bloc Mercosur entre en vigueur, application provisoire, et cela veut dire que nos citoyens, nos entreprises et nos agriculteurs puissent bénéficier dès day one des bénéfices qu'on a négociés dans ce traité. C'est-à-dire qu'on va réduire des tarifs sur un grand nombre de secteurs et produits. Ça veut dire que nos exportateurs européens auront des magnifiques nouvelles opportunités d'exportation, de croissance et la possibilité de créer des emplois ici en Europe. Il va ouvrir le marché Mercosur, qui est un marché de croissance, un marché très important. Il va notamment ouvrir le procurement public. Cela donne la possibilité à nos entreprises européennes d'entrer en compétition pour des contrats dans la région Mercosur. Et il y aura des très grandes possibilités dans l'accord. Et on est très content qu'après à peu près 25 ans de négociations, demain, enfin, le traité entre en application provisoire. Et on va faire de notre mieux pour bénéficier de cet accord.
Et donc, on propose aussi que ta grand-mère, mais tous les amis et tous les gens de la famille regardent la vidéo qui sera aussi très claire sur qu'est-ce que ça veut dire et quels sont les bénéfices de cet accord entre l'Union européenne et le Mercosur après tant d'années. Voilà. Autre question pour Olof. Let's see if I want to... Yes, in the back. Sorry, I hadn't seen your hand.
Thank you, Maria Simon, for your active. A follow-up for Olof on Mercosur. Some MEPs have raised concerns about the repartition of quotas, saying that leaving them up to Mercosur means that countries will benefit, mostly large Brazilian exporters. So do you have any clarification on this front? And then could you clarify if there will be any provisional implementation of the EMPA, so the non-trade part of the agreement? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We have seen quite a bit of fake news circulating about the issue you mentioned. This information does a disservice to our citizens, to our businesses, and to our farmers who deserve to have the facts at their disposal when it comes to EU trade deals. These are the facts. First, the EU retains full control over how import quotas are managed under our trade agreements. This is standard practice, and the Mercosur deal is no exception. Because Mercosur is a group of 4 countries, not a single country, what the agreement means, it gives them the possibility together to divide the common quota among themselves and notify this allocation to the EU. And by the way, no internal division of the quota has been made for 2026. So any suggestion to the contrary is speculation and fake news. Third, and most importantly, the Commission does, and the Commission always will, play an active role in these matters, reflecting the Commission's responsibilities on behalf of the European Union. So what that means is we are engaging, and we will continue to engage with our Mercosur partners to understand how quantities within that quota are allocated. We are closely monitoring price effects. We will continue to do so. We will monitor any broader impacts on the EU market. If any concerns arise, we will address them.
Thank you. Thank you for that question also, because important to clarify exactly how this works, what it is and what it is not. Now, other questions to Olaf? No. And we have, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes, now. Thank you, Julia Dam, Table Briefings. It's a question for Anna Kaiser on the Deforestation Regulation. On Monday, I think it was Monday, you said here that the Commission would publish the expected simplification measures by today at the latest, which is also the deadline set in the legislative text. Is this still the case, and can you confirm that the publication today, and maybe when today, if you can also say that?
What I said on Monday was that we will be presenting it in the next days and that it will not be Friday. This is what I said. Other than that, I do not have any timeline to give you. It is coming soon. I will quote my best and only friend, Phil Collins, who said, "You can't hurry EUDR, you just have to wait."
But I think we can say that we will probably not be waiting very long. Let's put it like this. But yes, patience is part of of your all qualities. We know that. Good. Let's see, because I still see questions which will probably be for you, Anna Kaiser, in the room. No, actually, I don't see more questions for Anna Kaiser. Any other question? And we take the final question there for the day and for the week, at least in this press room.
Bonjour. J'ai une petite autre question et justement je ne savais pas trop pour qui c'était. Hier, lors d'une interview au sein du Parlement européen, Jordan Bardella a dit que s'il était élu, il aimerait enlever le drapeau de l'Union européenne du perron de l'Élysée. Je voulais juste savoir si vous aviez un avis sur la question. Merci.
On a certainement un avis, mais pas de commentaire.